So with the addition of Anthony Duclair, the one question a lot of people are asking, what are the Islanders' line combinations going to look like? We'll address that and a lot more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We have got a lot to discuss on this July 4th, and happy birthday, America, and happy 4th of July to all those celebrating. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss in a future episode, send us an email. LockedOnIslanders@gmail.com is the email address. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR-VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long and all off season long. That'll include rating the draft picks, hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency. If it's happening to the New York Islanders, we'll discuss it here on the Locked On Islanders podcast, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you. Game time or anytime. So the buzz, obviously, the last few days has been about the signing of Anthony Duclair. And I guess the big question now is, since the Islanders don't have much cap space left, about $1 million, give or take, they can't add another player, not even, their own restricted free agents or unrestricted free agents. They could add one at, that price of roughly $1 million, depending on which source you look at. So, they may be able to bring back Simon Holmstrom or Ruslan Ishkakov or, Oliver Wahlstrom, I still think ends up being traded somewhere. But realistically, the Islanders cannot sign a new player unless they free up some cap space. The buyout window is closed. That's not happening. So basically, it's either the Islanders trade away a player to free up cap space, or this is the roster that we're going to see. And it brings up the question, what are the Islanders' line combinations most likely to look like? And the reason I bring this up is that the Daily Faceoff, which is a great website that basically gives you line combinations based on the lineup that started the most recent game. Well, they just updated their information on a lot of teams based on what happened in trades and free agency and the like. And here's what they put together for the Islanders, although I don't agree with it all. But here's what they put together. Top line, Bo Horvat, Anthony Duclair, Matthew Barzal. I agree that as of now, barring a new acquisition, that is the most likely top line. And I think it makes sense. Duclair has enough speed to keep up with Barzal. You'll have Barzal setting up Horvat and Duclair for goals. You'll have, 2 out of the 3 forwards on that line are speedy, and all 3 of them are capable of scoring 20 or more goals. And probably Duclair, definitely Horvat, they're capable of scoring 30. As of right now, Daily Faceoff says the second line is Brock Nelson, Pierre Engvall, and Kyle Palmieri. The third line, they say, is J.G. Pageau, Anders Lee, and Simon Holmstrom. And the fourth line would look like Cizikas, McLean, and Fasching. So, I don't think this is what it's going to look like. First of all, they left off Siplakov, which clearly, if you were paying attention during the pre and post draft press conferences by Lou Lamoriello, you know that Lou said he did not sign Maxim Siplakov in order to play in the AHL. Now, that doesn't mean he's a lock to make the team, but it does mean that they are looking to get him on the roster. And if he doesn't implode, he's going to start the season in the NHL. He is a guy who scored more than 30 goals in the KHL, which is not an easy thing to do. As of right now, in my mind, the second line most likely to be out there is Nelson, Siplakov, and Palmieri. I think that is your most likely second line. And again, it gives you two guys in Nelson and Palmieri who scored 30 goals in the NHL, and Maxim Siplakov, who scored more than 30 in the K. Let's even say that translates to 20 as he adjusts to life in the NHL. That's still a much more solid second line than if you put Engvall up there. Now the third line. Again, everybody's talking about J.G. Pageau being the most likely guy to be traded. You know, we've been hearing these rumors for more than a year now with regard to Pageau. And yet, every day, I check the news, I check the rosters, J.G. Pageau remains a New York Islander, and he's still got some time left on his deal. So he's not going anywhere right away. Now, again, he could be traded today, although I doubt they'll make a move on July 4th. But as of right now, J.G. Pageau, 2 years left on his contract at a cap hit of $5 million. Anders Lee, I agree. Again, other rumors about him, but I agree if Lee stays on the roster, it would be Pageau and Lee. But the third spot in my mind on that line probably belongs to Pierre Engvall. Maybe it's a battle between Engvall and Holmstrom if they re-sign Holmstrom. Remember, he is a restricted free agent. We'll see. If they re-sign Ishkakov, could he compete with Holmstrom if they bring him back as well? And Engvall for a spot on the third line. Yeah, he probably could. I have a feeling, just based on a feeling now, not specifically saying it's going to be this way, but I have a feeling that the Islanders will not be re-signing Ishkakov, that he'll either be traded, his rights will be traded, or he will be heading back to Russia to play in the KHL. Again, nothing has been decided yet. No announcement has been made. That's just my gut feeling based on the Islanders' present salary cap, the way this roster is being constructed, and for what it's worth, the way both the coaching staff and management, i.e. Lou Lamoriello, have treated Ishkakov so far. He really has nothing to prove by going back to the AHL. He was an AHL All-Star each of the last 2 seasons. Not a point-per-game guy in the AHL, but still clearly the best player on a struggling Bridgeport Islanders team last year. And we'll see whether or not he is back. But as of right now, to me, you're looking at a third line of Pageau, Lee, and Engvall as the most likely. And then you have your fourth line. And that leaves Casey Cizikas, Kyle McLean. You got Hudson Fasching. You may have Oliver Wahlstrom if they don't trade him. I think they will. Heck, it could be Ruslan Ishkakov if they bring him back. There are a lot of different options here on that fourth line. Julien Gauthier is a long shot, although, again, I think he's back in the AHL. But as of right now, the Daily Faceoff projects Cizikas, McLean, and Fasching. Again, keep in mind, no cap room right now to bring back Matt Martin. No cap room right now to bring back Cal Clutterbuck. And I'm not saying they should bring back those guys at this stage and where the Islanders are at. So to me, if the season would start today and the Islanders make no other moves, you're looking at Horvat, Duclair, Barzal, Nelson, Siplakov, Palmieri, Pajot, Lee, Engvall, Cizikas, McLean, Fashing, subject to re-signings or any other moves that are made. And the defense pair, Dobson and Romanov, Pelech and Polak, Mayfield and Riley, with the seventh defenseman being obviously Samuel Bolduc. So that's sort of how it's looking as of right now in my mind. I'd love to hear your input. Please feel free to make a comment here on the YouTube page or send an email, lockedonislanders@gmail.com. What you think, again, assuming that there are no other major signings, what do you think this lineup should look like? It will be interesting to see. And again, Patrick Waugh, look, you still have training camp. You still have guys battling for positions. You still have Matt Maggio and William Dufour, guys who, have showed something in the AHL, but have yet to prove themselves in the NHL. Maybe they played a game here or there, maybe they didn't. Those guys will get a look in the preseason, and we'll see what happens. But as of right now, that's how I see the lineup. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. What does this team still need? Let's talk a little bit about that. And then we'll also talk about the team over the last couple of days has signed a bunch of players to fortify organizational depth, brought in some players for Bridgeport. We'll break down those signings. And oh yes, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who was with the Islanders from the early 2000s all the way through the 2010-2011 season. Let's see if you can guess who this two-way forward is. We've got that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. And prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and you get their lowest price guarantee. So Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time is the view from your seat. You go on the app, and before you purchase the tickets, you'll get a panoramic view of what you'll see from that seat, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube with the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So what does this team still need? I think that is a big question that needs to be addressed. And I look at this lineup and I still do see some areas that could use improvement. And, to me, more than anything, another top six forward to me would be ideal. Whether that moves Duclair down to the second forward line or keeps him on the first, it's not likely to be, Mitch Marner or a guy who's going to break the bank. But get me another player similar to Anthony Duclair, a solid top six, even, a solid second line guy, and it really ups the ante. And I'm not saying I don't believe in Maxim Siplakov, because I have No idea how he's going to pan out in the NHL. And that, to me, is the point. It would put a lot less pressure on him if he starts out on the third line and you bring in another polished goal scorer on the second line. And again, when I say polished goal scorer, 20 to 25 goals minimum consistently, preferably someone with a little more speed. All of that, to me, would make a lot of sense. Again, you got to trade away in order to bring in. But, we've talked about Lee or Pajot, or, some people have mentioned Cizikas as a possible potential trade candidate. Whoever it is that you're dealing away, I just, again, think another top 6 forward would be ideal for this team. The blue line, to me right now, the top 7 is more or less set, as I mentioned. Romanov, Dobson, Pelech, Polak, Riley, Mayfield, Bolduc as your number 7. If Bolduc develops and gains a little bit more confidence, he probably could surpass Riley as the 6th guy, or maybe they have a rotation of some kind, depending on whether you want a bigger guy like Bolduc in the lineup against a more physical team, or you want a quicker guy like Riley in the lineup. Again, these are decisions that Patrick Waugh will have to make once we see how Bolduc looks in training camp and in practice and during the regular season. But looking at this forward unit, there is still a need, without question, for a little more grit, a little more sandpaper. And I'm not saying you need a guy who is only going to fight, but I think you need a guy who is capable of dropping the gloves and defending teammates when necessary. And I think you need one or two more guys to just make it harder to play against. There are too many guys that are like, okay, Pierre Engvall, Simon Holmstrom, they're both just not physical. They have other attributes like speed that you like. Engvall has that long reach. Holmstrom is, able to play well defensively, positionally. They do bring things to the table. I'm not going to deny that. But when you're looking at your bottom 6, you want a little more grit, a little more size, and a little more nastiness. It doesn't have to be a goon, but I want a little bit more grit. Kyle McLean gives you some. Casey Cizikas certainly gives you some. Hudson Fasching is not quite in that mold, although I guess he can get the job done. But I would like at least, you're losing most likely Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin. If they're not coming back, and I don't think they should come back based on their age and the decline in their play and the cost and all of those things. But if they're not coming back, I want at least one more guy in this lineup who will stick up for his teammates, who will make the Islanders tougher to play against, who will add a little grit and determination to the lineup. And I just want to see a little bit more of that. It would also help, in my mind, if there is a penalty killer out there. Right now, I mean, Pajot and Cizikas would be 2 penalty killers as far as forwards go. Holmstrom would certainly be a third if he's back. Are you going to play Bo Horvat on your second PK unit? I mean, he certainly is capable of doing the job, but, I don't want him getting all tired out on the PK. If you could find a bottom 6 guy who can fill that role, maybe Hudson Fasching can fill in, maybe Kyle McLean can fill it. But to me, if you get a guy who is both physical and who can kill penalties, you're adding something to this team that I think it really does need. And the PK, let's face it, the PK does need a boost. And hopefully the addition of Tommy Albaline as the new defense and penalty killing coach will help this unit. but boy, oh boy, last year was historically bad. And again, adding a guy who can do that, who can kill those penalties and add a little sandpaper, to me makes just a heck of a lot of sense if I am the general manager of the New York Islanders. So we'll see. We'll see how this all plays out. I don't necessarily think we're going to get more moves, but if we do, it's got to be money out to bring players in. And when I say money out, it's contracts out for contracts in. We'll see whether or not Lou Lamoriello has anything else up his sleeve, because again, the Islanders are a better team than they were a week ago, but they are not so much better than the other teams in the Eastern Conference that also made moves, that I think they moved from fringe playoff team that is somewhere between, let's say, 6th and 10th in the conference to a top 5 team in the Eastern Conference. And, still got work to do, because that's what you want to be. And I think it really does require, again, moving some players out to get better players in. Whether or not that'll happen remains to be seen. All right, we've got more to get to on today's show. The Islanders signed a slew of players who are expected to bolster Bridgeport, and we know what they struggled with last year. Plus, we'll have our Islanders birthday of the day, that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So the Islanders made some moves, but these are moves that really have a bigger impact on the AHL Islanders, the Bridgeport Islanders, than they do on the NHL Islanders. On Tuesday, the Islanders added 2 more players to the roster. They are Fredrik Karlstrom and Mark Gacombe. Now, Karlstrom, 25. He is a center. It's a 1-year deal at the NHL minimum of $775,000, and it's a one-way deal. So he's going to get that $775,000 whether or not he plays for Bridgeport or New York. And look, he was originally a 3rd-round pick of the Dallas Stars back in 2016. He is a Swede. He has played the last 3 years in the AHL with the Texas Stars, and his best year was last year, 72 games, 21 goals, 44 points. He does have 8 NHL games under his belt, 1 assist in those games, and at 6'2", 200, he could be a guy who is your 13th or 14th forward and, could be a candidate for the bottom 6. But again, I would expect, barring a really strong showing in training camp, especially since he's a center and the Islanders have both Casey Cizikas and Kyle McLean, who are capable of being 4th-line centers, that, that's more likely to be his role. As for Gacombe, a 1-year deal, but it's a 2-way deal. So he'll make the league minimum if he's with the Islanders, but he will also make less than that if he's down on Bridgeport. And remember, if either of these players play for Bridgeport, their cap number will not count against the Islanders. So 6'2", 200, 4 years at the University of Connecticut, was a free agent signee with Vancouver in 2022. Played 106 games over the last 2 years with the Abbotsford Canucks, 12 goals, 16 assists, so 28 total points in, basically what is one, if you're doing full seasons, 1.5, a little less than that. Again, probably not a candidate for the NHL Islanders, but certainly somebody who could help the Islanders' depth organizationally. Wednesday, the Islanders added 3 more players to AHL contracts. That is Justin Gil, Bryant Pinho, and defenseman Wyatt Newpower. Gil, 21 years old, 5th round pick. And again, older guy, 21 years old, playing in the Quebec Junior League last year. And, he had his moments. Let's not kid ourselves there. But being overage, you kind of take some of what he did with a grain of salt, where, he scored in 65 games, 40 goals, 58 assists. But again, he was the oldest guy on the team, and that certainly does put a little asterisk, at least, next to his production. Pinho, he was with Bridgeport last year, finished second on the team with 34 points. He's 29 years old, not a prospect, but certainly a useful veteran AHL player. And then Newpower was the best defenseman for University of Connecticut in 2020. Also was their team captain in 2019, 2020. Spent last year with Grand Rapids, the Griffins of the AHL, had 1 goal, 7 points in 34 games. So I would be surprised if any of these 3 are with the NHL Islanders other than as injury fill-ins, but they certainly are hopefully going to help Bridgeport, which, as we know, has struggled mightily in the last year or two. And you certainly want to develop a winning culture throughout your organization. So hopefully these veteran guys give us some good hockey down in Bridgeport. And as you know, everydayers, we cover Bridgeport. We have our weekly farm report throughout the AHL season. So make sure you join us throughout the year for those, and we will keep you updated on what's going on the farm. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and tomorrow, Friday, will be the 44th birthday of former Islanders winger Trent Hunter. The Red Deer, Alberta native, originally a 6th round pick of the Anaheim Mighty Ducks back in 1998, but made his NHL debut with the Islanders in the 2002 playoffs and became a full-time Islander in 03-04, stayed with the team through 2010-2011, and then finished his career with the LA Kings. Hung him up after the 2011-2012 season. His best year, 25 goals, 51 points in 2003-2004 in 497 career NHL games, 101 goals, 236 points, 209 penalty minutes, add 4 goals, 5 points in 14 playoff games, all of those coming as an Islander. One of his better games with the Isles, how about November 19th, 2003, Islanders visiting South Florida to take on the Panthers. Rick DiPietro, the goalie for the Isles. Roberto Luongo, the former Islander, in between the pipes for the Panthers. And our Islanders birthday of the day, Trent Hunter, got the scoring started at the 5:09 mark. Eric Cairns and Sean Bates with the assist. That made it 1-0 Islanders. With the score already 3-1 Islanders, well, 2-1 Islanders, excuse me. Hunter sets up Bates for a goal in the second period. Adrian Aucoin, the other helper. And then in the third, Hunter, his 8th of the year from Bates and Jason Blake. Islanders beat Florida by a score of 4-1. And in this game, Trent Hunter, our Islanders birthday of the day, 2 goals, an assist. He was a +3, and he had 3 shots on goal and played 14 minutes and 57 seconds. Did not have the game winner. That went to Matthias Tamander. Rick DiPietro, 26 saves to earn the win. And the New York Islanders get a strong 3-point night from Trent Hunter. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Everydayers, tomorrow on the show, we'll have the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Plus, we will, again, take a deeper dive into the impact of the signing of Anthony Duclair. Plus, we'll eventually in coming shows start talking about each of the Islanders' individual draft picks and what they mean to the team and where they'll fit into the organization. So make sure you join us for that. We will be here all off season long, bringing you the latest Islanders news, notes, and happenings. Until then, have a great holiday. Happy 4th of July. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.